And I can't hide. These growing pains are keeping me up at night.
The information that we share today is from our own personal experiences and does not constitute medical advice. We do not endorse any products or services. Any said products or services mentioned on this podcast may not be suitable for you or your condition. Please consult with your physician if you have medical questions as it may pertain to your condition.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Today on Take a Pain Check, I get the honor to introduce our guest, Ravia. Ravia currently works as a MAC artist. So hi Ravia, I'm super excited to have you on today. Can you start off with an introduction about yourself and your diagnosis?
Hey, I'm so excited to be on here. Thanks for having me. My name is Ravia. I am 29 years old. I was actually diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis at the age of 13. So I've had it for 16 years now. Currently working as a MAC artist and a freelance makeup artist. Left my pharmacy background behind just because I wasn't happy there. So I'm glad to follow my passion at the moment.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you were able to kind of figure out what you liked. I know sometimes like you're in the situation where you try something and you don't like it. It's not the best thing that works for you. And I'm glad that you're able to now do what you love. So what joints are affected?
When I was actually first diagnosed, it was my knees, and then it kind of like spread out basically everywhere. I actually used to play soccer when I was younger, from the age of 8 till basically 13 when I got diagnosed, just because it affected me so much. Like whenever I would even try to go back into sports, I would somehow end up getting a flare up, right? Yes, when I was younger, it was everywhere, but at the moment, it's mostly in my hands, like my knuckles. From time to time, I'll feel it in my knees, but mostly it's just like in my hands. The last, I want to say like 3 to 4 years. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. So this is what I kind of want to get into because you say you're a MAC artist, but you have to use your hands. So I'm really interested to kind of like dive deep into that and like what you do on a daily basis and how that affects you. But before we get into that, you said you were diagnosed at 13. Interestingly enough, I was also diagnosed with JIA at the age of 13. So how did you know that it was time that you needed to consult a physician?
Okay, so I started getting a lot of the symptoms. So it just started off being as where I thought it was a knee injury. I was like, oh yeah, I play soccer. My knee is injured. That's okay. Like, I'll just keep playing. Like, it happens to athletes, right? So it started off with that. And then it went to where I was actually getting, like, I would have a fever every single day at the same time, like every single night. And then that lasted for about 2 to 3 weeks before my parents were like, this isn't okay. Like, you're getting a fever every single night and you're complaining about your knee. But then when I would get the fever, it would, like, everything would hurt. So then we first went to my family my family physician. And when he was kind of doing a checkup and he was like, oh, okay. He's like, I guess like he didn't know what it was, but he's like, oh, you have like a heart murmur, which would kind of, I guess, is like when your heart kind of skips a beat.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, you need to go to the emergency like right now. You need to get it checked out. So that's when we went to Children's Hospital and the BC Children's Hospital. So they admitted me in and they had to basically do some sort of test every single day. So I would either have a blood work done, and then we did CT scans. We did like where I would have to like fast, and like I don't even remember all the tests that I got done. I think I even got like a bone marrow done. So I was in the hospital for 4 weeks.
Wow.
But we didn't know what was going on. And then finally, like, I guess there was an indicator in my blood work that showed, yes, I have like inflammation. And then we were able to kind of rule everything else out. And then in 4 weeks, I was able to get diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis. And when I was actually like put on some anti-inflammatories, that's when we started noticing that I'm getting better. So that was like the whole process. Um,
Why? You were 13 when all of this like 4 week stuff happened.
yeah,
Okay, so did you miss any school because of that?
a lot of school. I was put into the hospital like right before it was a Christmas like vacation or like the 2 week holiday that you usually get.
Yeah.
So I was like off school 2 weeks prior to the vacation, and then the vacation came along. So all of my like even Christmas vacation, I was at in the hospital. So I went back to school right after like Christmas, like the vacation happened. I would still have to miss classes in between just because like I would feel like achy or I'd feel sore or I just wouldn't want to go because I'm just like I feel gross. Like the medication side effects, like I'd have a like my stomach would hurt or I'd feel nauseous, right? So it's like there's
Yeah.
like a medication that's helping me, but it's also has a weird side effect to it, right? So
Yeah, it's kind of hard in those situations because like, yeah, it's helping you, but it's also causing other things. So it kind of gets really frustrating.
it does. And especially at the age of like 13. Okay, you're already like transitioning like from in BC how it works is like you're in elementary school from like kindergarten to grade 7 and then start high school in grade 8 and it's like grade 8 to 12. Like that's in the area that I grew up in, that's how it is. So I was like transitioning from elementary school to high school. So that's already one change. And then like the whole like my arthritis happened and that's like another transition and I'm trying to like adjust to that. So I was just like, yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, and it must have been like really stressful, but how did you feel in like the period of uncertainty in like those 4 weeks in the hospital? Like what was kind of going on in your mind?
It was definitely scary. Just the fear of the unknown. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, am I going to make it out of here? Right. That was like my biggest thing. Am I going to make it out of here? And just seeing my family being scared for me. Right.
Yeah.
So, because didn't know what was going on either. So you would like see them cry at times. Right. So, and then my siblings, they're like younger than me and they would come in and they'd just be like, oh, like why is our big sister in the hospital? Right. So it was tough. And but just like knowing that my family was there to just support me through it all, it was nice. It was like my family, my extended family. It was like that just kind of taught me the importance of having family. So
Like especially support is so important in like these tough times, and I'm glad that your family was there with you like throughout because that definitely would have supported you, especially because you're like at such a young age in the hospital for 4 weeks. That's a
yeah,
lot. Like, I go to the hospital like one day to just get like a checkup and it's like life's ending like right there. But then you think about everyone else who was in the hospital for so long and it's just like, it's like you're grateful for like your situation.
exactly. And I remember even because I basically spent like Christmas and New Year's in the hospital. I remember on New Year's Eve, so like my family, just my close family and like some of my cousins came and like were able to visit me and we just like ordered pizza in the room. So it's like we were still able to do that just because like they wanted to make sure I was still able to have some sort of fun, and not just be
Yeah.
sad that I'm in the hospital, right? So
Yeah, and that's so good. They like found how to like incorporate, New Year's, even though like usually people be like parties, blah blah blah. Able to
exactly.
still like do it in the hospital, which it's better than doing nothing, like you mentioned. Like it's so much better. And you feel happy too, because at least you're like not depressed in the situation. Once you came back to school after those few weeks, how did you approach your teachers and friends about your new diagnosis?
It was one of the social workers at Children's Hospital who had sent me back with like a folder
Mhm.
that I can take to my counselor because I actually didn't know how to approach my teachers and even some of my friends. Like, I'm like, how am I supposed to share this with them, right? I went and saw my counselor at school. I took in the folder. I was like, this is kind of what's going on. But like my mom and dad came with me. We just kind of discussed it with the counselor, and then the counselor actually went ahead and he let the teachers know that, okay, like this is Ravia and this is what's going on. So when I did go back, all the teachers already like knew what was going on. So it's like I didn't really have to talk to them or explain to them, but it's like they just kind of knew. So I didn't have to go up and like share the whole story, because I feel like at the same time I wasn't ready because it was still very fresh and I'm still kind of learning how to cope with it myself. Yeah, I wasn't ready to just talk about it with anyone actually. I do know like some of my friends knew, but that's because they actually came to visit me at the hospital as well. So I wasn't able to like tell them like fully the story, but I was like, yeah, this is what I have, and that's kind of it, right? So
Yeah, it's hard to say, especially at like a young age. Sometimes you don't even like bother explaining. It's like this is what I have. Like if you don't know what that is, like neither do I. Kind of.
yeah, exactly. It's like I'm trying to figure it out myself because I know it's like there's for the longest time I was like, oh, arthritis, it's an old, like only old people get it, right? So it's like, yeah, my grandma has it and like my aunt has it, but then it's like, oh, I have it at 13. Okay, like
Yeah, it's hard to kind of digest, especially like you're in the hospital and you had so much going on, and now you have to like kind of explain it to people. But it's good that you didn't have to really like explain too much to your teachers. That's good. So, what accommodations were you offered at school, and like if you did have any, or like how did the process work?
basically again it was like through my social worker, so we discussed what I would need for me to go back to school or like be in school, right? So I would need to use the elevator, right, to get to different floors. So I had a note for that. I would be able to like leave class a little bit early just to make it to my next class, right? So just because sometimes it would take a little bit longer to get from one class to another class, right? If I have like sore knees or my ankles are sore, right? But those are basically the main comment. Oh, and my locker would have to be the top locker. So we always made sure, just because it was always hard to kind of bend down and
Yeah.
get a lower locker, right? I didn't want to do that. And I would try to first fit everything in my backpack to carry rather than me having to go back to my locker. But then I learned I was like, but my backpack's too heavy. So I was like, you know what? I'd rather leave a little bit earlier. I'd rather leave class a little bit earlier, grab my books for my next class, and then I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so now you're obviously not 13 anymore, and it's been a really long time since you were diagnosed. So would you say your symptoms have changed since the beginning of being diagnosed at 13 years old?
Oh, definitely. I found because at 13, where it's just still it was still new. It just happened. I feel like I had a lot of people trying to give me like advice. Oh, you should try this. You should do this. You should eat this, right? So of course I followed my doctor's advices, like the medications that they put me on definitely helped me throughout those years. But as I got older, I found stuff that worked for me.
Okay.
So I know like now certain foods affect me. The way I like think, if I know when I'm like anxious or I'm stressed, I'll get like a mini flare up. So, and even just the way like my joints feel at times, it's not the way that they used to feel at 13. But then sometimes I think I was like, is it just because my body's used to it now? So it doesn't feel as like painful because my body's like used to pain, you know? So, but that's kind of how I do it. So yeah, I've like cut out certain foods and like drinks. And
I'm curious to know how you manage your pain like on a daily basis, or how you have developed like pain management skills and strategies to help you.
So as soon as I kind of feel there's a flare up coming up, or if I am in pain, it's usually when like I'm usually in pain when I first wake up. So I'll kind of start stretching, like for my hands, I'll start doing like some hand stretches. I need to really warm up my hands, because if it's cold, that's when I find it's the most sore. So I'll do stretches. I've actually been doing, I've started meditating. So I find when I actually am like breathing and focusing on that and just kind of being there with myself, it's a little bit easier to manage the pain rather than kind of being like, oh my gosh, I'm in pain, because I'm focusing more on that. And I'll take, like I'll use heat pads from time to time. The way I eat and like my lifestyle, like that's been working for me. So, and of course, like everyone should do like what works for them, right? But I found that's been working the last 2 years or so.
That's so good. Like I try to meditate as much as I can. Like it's not something that, well, my schedule's so busy, and I'm sure yours is too. Like, where do I find this time? But I feel like it's really important to make time. I do like the guided meditation, but like, and then they have like peaceful music for like 10 minutes, and I'm like, amazing. I can just like not talk anymore, just like, thing. And I like how it's like guided and not. But do you have any like specific, I don't know, what do you listen to when you meditate, or what do you do?
So I will do actually, like, I love guided meditations just because like they'll like kind of like walk you through it. So it's just like, I feel like if I don't do that, sometimes I'll just kind of wander off somewhere else. There's one on like YouTube that I listen to actually before I even go to bed. That one like will go from like the top of my head to my feet, and then it's like, okay, now focus on your head, now focus here. So you're just focusing at like one thing at a time rather than like everything at once. And then I feel like when you're focusing on one thing at a time, it just kind of helps for me personally. I'm not saying it's for like everybody.
Yeah, and that's so good. Like, I'm glad you shared that, and I will snatch that name from you soon, and everyone will be able to check it out in the description. So if they want to try meditating with what Ravia uses, feel free to try.
Sure.
Might work.
For sure.
Yeah, we'll leave it in the description for everyone to check out. So you mentioned lifestyle changes in food, and I'd love to know like kind of how you came to that, I guess, determination of what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and how have you been kind of maintaining that over the years? Or maybe it's not even over the years. It might have just been like last month or something. But how do you
first off, let's just say for like my foods or what I eat now, I started noticing whenever I would have, I know, let's just say like pizza or anything cheesy, anything with cheese on it, I would wake up the next day and my hands would be swollen. And I would be like, okay, like why is it like swollen this day, but then the next day it would be okay. And then, so I started kind of slowly picking that up, that dairy affects me more than like other food groups. So, and then I started doing some research as well by myself, right? And then I saw like, I guess like a lot of stuff online that says, yes, dairy will affect certain, like can affect arthritis. But again, I feel like it's different for everybody, right? And so I started cutting off my dairy little by little, and I noticed a huge shift. So there was this one point where I didn't have dairy for like 2 weeks straight. I was like, I'm just going to cut it out. And I felt so good. So it's like, okay, like I can do this. But then I would have cravings for like pizza or like something. I still love cheese. So now what I've learned to do is like 80-20. So 80% of the time I'll just be like, okay, no dairy, because I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to wake up in pain all the time. But then when I do have a craving, maybe like once a week or something, I'll be like, you know what? It's a Saturday. I'm just going to have pizza. So I'll do that. So that's one of the main things that I noticed. Oh, and also gluten as well. So I'm trying to cut out gluten a little bit as well. But again, it's 80-20 for me right now. And it's been working from my experience for me.
It's so amazing you bring that up. I'm actually vegan and gluten-free, like fully, and it's helped my arthritis so much. So it's really interesting to kind of hear someone else talk about it. So a lot of people say like salty foods or like sugary foods or like oil. And so
Yeah.
like I don't have oil as well in my food. That's because my mom cooks for me, you know. Like I don't cook
Yeah.
myself. So like she has the time, well, she doesn't have the time, but she makes time. And
Yeah.
I realized like over the years, for like 5 years, I kind of did like an elimination lifestyle change where I would do like eliminated food just like you to see like the next day I was in so much pain. And like over the summer I went on vacation and like it was really hard to like, you know, I went to a resort. So it's kind of hard to, you know, say, oh yeah, like I need my vegan food and my gluten-free food and I need my oil-free food in a
Yeah.
resort. And I found it like really challenging. So I was like, okay, like I'll try to make really healthy choices, but you know, you don't really know what people put in there.
Yeah.
And I realized like when I came back, like I could not walk. My feet were hurting so much. And it was really bad. So I know that food especially is really impacted like my arthritis. And yeah, I can go on and like eat it, but then I'll just know how much
Yeah.
pain I'll be in. So it's kind of like, I think even maybe even for you, but I kind of like, I know my pain cycle just because I know that if I eat something, I know what's going to happen and the consequences. So if I make that decision, that's all my fault.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like that's on me then, right? It's I choose to not have those foods for me, or like if I do
Yeah.
have it, it's like it's still my fault because I did it to myself. And you, like you were saying, you know how like your body works, right? So
Yeah. And it's
yeah.
really interesting that you bring that up because literally same, like same.
Yeah. And I know like before I would hear, oh yeah, like food doesn't make a difference or that's not a factor. But then that's when it kind of comes to like, no, I'm gonna like I'll listen to what you're saying, but I'm also gonna do what works for me. Yeah.
And it's hard. Like it's not that it's such an easy like change. It's
Yeah.
hard. You go into like social settings where it's like it just gets awkward and you have to like kind of explain yourself, especially for me because like I'm vegan, so it's like it's hard. It's just like what do I do? But I've kind of like the people that I surround myself with understand and they still like try
Yeah.
to accommodate me.
Exactly. Right. So
Yeah, and I think it's important for everyone to just like, you know, see what works well in their body because that's really important. Do you like actively have like any sort of inflammation right now or like do you feel like any pain on a regular basis? Because I know for me, the only reason why I feel pain is if I like write too much and like my wrist hurts or something, or if I eat something wrong. Otherwise, like right now I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm living life, you know?
yeah.
So I want to know like how like your lifestyle changes kind of made your pain be like on a daily basis.
Yeah. No, definitely. So me sitting here right now, I'm actually okay. So no really like active, I'm not in like active pain all the time at the moment. But yes, if I type too much or if I'm like actually physically writing too much, then I will have like my wrist will be sore. The interesting thing is actually when I like right now, I'm not really doing a lot of makeup just because of everything going on. So I haven't kind of like out of practice, I haven't been able to see how I'm doing with actual like makeup application on people. But before, like I know my back would get very sore, like just because when I'm doing makeup, like when I would freelance, I would have to bend down to my kit, grab my brush and product, do the makeup on someone, and then again, same. Like I would be consistently up, down, up, down, up, down. So usually if I was like doing a client for like an hour and a half, yes, my back would be sore, but my wrist not so much. But another note I want to say is like I actually recently got wrist surgery done as well 2 years ago. But that wasn't because of my arthritis. That was actually because I had got into a very bad car accident. So that was a whole other thing that happened.
Why?
Yeah. So I was like, okay, like I always knew I was like, oh yeah, I have arthritis, but I never expected like I would have to get surgery because of a car accident. So since that too, I basically haven't done freelance for the last 2 years because of that too. So it's like arthritis on top of the accident. I was like, well, this is great. Yeah.
It must be such a struggle. So you work, which is what we kind of discussed, but
Yeah.
when did you kind of feel comfortable talking about your arthritis to other people, or like sharing your story with new friends or employees at work?
Yeah.
Is it something you kind of have to deal with?
Yeah. So like, the thing with me is I'll never bring it up when I like in an interview. Like say if like when I'm first getting the job, like I remember just like even my previous interviews, just like for a pharmacy, but now even makeup. I never brought it up in the interview because I was like, you know what, it doesn't affect me. Like, I just don't want anyone to see me differently or
Mhm.
feel like, oh, she has arthritis, she won't be able to do this kind of thing, right? So how I bring it up is like kind of like slowly when it's been like a month or two. I remember then I was like, we would just be like, oh yeah, like I'll start off with like, oh yeah, like my legs are sore today kind of thing, right? And then I'll be like, oh, by the way, like I have arthritis. I'll just kind of like slide it in there. And I was like, some days it's worse than others. Some days I feel nothing. Like, and then they're like, oh, like you're so young. I was like, I know. I was like 13. Like kids get it too. And then that's just kind of how I bring it up. But then I don't go into too much detail with like even like my employees. I just say, I have this. I have like good days, but I also have like will have bad days. But in that sense, like wherever I've actually worked, everybody has just been so understanding. Because if I ever do have a bad day, I am like able to call in and be like, hey, like I cannot come in today. Like there have been days where I just can't get out of bed, right? Like, but they're very rare for me now, but there have been those days still. Or like if I need to leave work early, I can leave work early. Whereas like if I'm like if I just feel super sore that day, or if I'm like, because you still feel run down. Like I feel like, especially our bodies, like if we don't, like for myself personally, like if I don't have some sort of rest in between, like that's when I'll feel like, oh my gosh, like I feel like my body's gonna get a flare up if I don't rest. Like I can like feel it's gonna get worse. So then I'd rather just be like, hey, I'm gonna go home. And then so far all my like managers are so understanding and they're great. And even just like the other employees, if they're like, if you need anything, just let us know, right? So
I don't have like a job or anything. It's not something that I just say, like, hi, I'm Natasha, I have arthritis. It's more so I'm gonna be friends with you, especially because it's invisible. It's easy to like pass off with like me not having anything. So I'm gonna get to know you and then
yeah,
I'm gonna be, by the way, like this is how my life kind of works. Or like I'm in pain today and then slip it in like you did. I think for me, especially like that's very normal for me to do. Like I would do
yeah,
that too.
yeah,
And sometimes it's kind of like, should I be doing that? Because like, they should accept me for who I am,
yeah,
give me the job regardless of me having arthritis. But I think, yeah, that's a good point. But it's just human nature for people to automatically judge you when you mention that you have like a disability and it might not even be visible, right?
yeah. And they're like, oh, you don't look like it. I was like, yeah, I don't look like it, but
It is a challenge, but I mean, like, if you know how to, like, get your way through it with being successful and also, like, telling them about it eventually and still being in, like, a positive work environment, I think that's really good.
exactly. Because I have both of my hips replaced as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So that was like when I was 16. So 16 and 17, I got my left and right hip replaced. So now like it's the best decision I ever made because can't even like tell that my hips are actually replaced. But even with that, like everybody's like, oh, like you're walking perfectly fine. I was like, yeah, that's because my hips got replaced. Like if they like weren't replaced, I was like, I could not walk. Like it was to the point where I was not able to walk.
Oh,
So even when I'm at work, like when I go on break, I'll always like need like the comfy chair. So there's like a comfy chair in the back and like the ones like that have padding and everything. And then when I again, then I'll still share that at work with my like employees and just days if I'm having a long shift, I will just need a break in between, right? So I feel like it was important for them to know that I need to go and sit down.
you had your wrist or surgery.
Yeah, that one was it has like a plate and like screws in there.
Was that like recent?
Yeah, this one was 2 years ago.
Oh my, okay, so what else have you not told us about replacements?
Both of my hips and my wrist. No other surgeries. Hopefully, I won't need anything for a very long time. Usually, I know like when I did get my hips replaced, they were saying, oh, it can like last between like 15 to 20 years. But because I was so young when I got it done, it could even be longer. Just because like when I was going through my recovery process, like I went through like intense physio, like so I actually went to like rehab. So that's where like I was doing physio every single day, 2 times a day. So to make sure that my hips would be strong just going forward, right? So I'm hoping they last my whole life because I do not want to go through a surgery again.
I'm hoping they do too. You'll be fine. So let's switch it up to kind of like some interests that you have and what you've been working on. So, like we mentioned before, you switched careers from being a pharmacy technician to a makeup artist. How did you know that it wasn't the right path for you, and what obstacles did you face while making this transition?
So I actually went to makeup school before I even did my pharmacy technician program. However, I did pharmacy technician because I was like, oh, like makeup's not gonna really take me anywhere, and like what if like my wrists start hurting? Like I need to do something else. So I did my pharmacy technician program. I did, and then I worked as a pharmacy technician for like 3 years. But then I would like get just like I would be so like sad and like angry all the time, and then I would start getting flare-ups again, right? And then I was like, I'm not happy. Like, what am I doing? I've like my health is declining too. Then I was like, you know what? I need to go back into makeup. I was like, that's where my passion is. I'm happy there. So when I even started just doing it for fun, like on my friends from time to time, and then I started noticing, I was like, I feel a lot happier. So the transition for me, it was very easy because I had a lot of support. So I was like, Mom, Dad, I don't want to go further with like my pharmacy technician stuff. So I'm going to go back to being a makeup artist. They're like, you do what makes you happy. Cause like even throughout the years, like we noticed like whenever I would be stressed or I would be sad, my like health would start declining again. Mm-hmm. So it was an easy decision to make. I just needed to, I guess, go through that to realize that I just need to follow my passion. And now I'm very happy just doing exactly that. Even though I'm not freelancing right now, just with MAC in general, just because like there's makeup there and like the whole, like everybody at the workplace is super nice. And we just like talk about makeup all the time. And like, even with like customers, we share our passion and like they can see that, right? So
it's so great that you're kind of pursuing your passion. I know there's like hurdles that always come along the way. You got to try different things, and it's good that you kind of like you had that support from your family that it's like all good. You got to do what you got to do. Like my parents are really supportive too. Like I'm doing science, which is like such a toll on my hands, but like I still want to pursue that, and they're just like, you know what, if like this is what you want to do, it's fine, but you also have like alternatives, and like we're okay with that. You can just like chill, don't be stressed. And you wouldn't expect like sometimes you don't really expect parents to be like, you know, very chill about some stuff or like really into like having those conversations saying like don't stress out. But you know, like I feel like sometimes it's just different when you have those conversations.
Exactly. And it's like, even like going through that transition, I had like just met my boyfriend of 3 years now. Mm-hmm. And even him, like, he was like, you do what you need to do. Cause like, I had told him about my whole arthritis like journey as well. And he's like, you don't want your health to decline. So like, he was like super supportive as well. And he's just like always, he's like my number one cheerleader. It's so cute. He's like, do what makes you happy. And then,
so how did you tell your boyfriend that you had arthritis? I'm curious.
So I think this was like probably like our 5th date, and I was like, by the way, like we were just like talking about traveling, and then I was like, oh, like whenever I go through like airport security, I always beep. He's like, why? I was like, well, both my hips are replaced because they're metal, right? So like beep through the whole metal detector thing, and then he's like, what? I was like, yeah, both my hips are replaced. I was like, so, you know, I have like arthritis. I was diagnosed at 13. So then I like gave him the whole story. And then he's like, wow. He's like, you went through all that. So I was just like, he didn't like judge me. Like, whereas like I've had people who are just like, oh, like, what the heck? And he's like, wow, that's a lot. He's like, I'm proud of you. And I was like, what? I was like, thanks. So I was just like, I kind of like knew that I did the right thing sharing it with him. And like, that's kind of what led us to like this. Otherwise, I feel like I wouldn't like me and him wouldn't be here either, right? So
it's like the perfect moment where you could like, you know, put it in the story.
Exactly.
Like, it makes sense. And I feel like if you do it like kind of the right way, then you see like what people's reactions are, and then you can like properly, associate yourselves with them or not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the way that you were able to do that. Because we talked about makeup, where did your like passion for makeup actually come from?
My passion started probably when I was like 16. That's when like YouTube, I guess, like first started. Like YouTube was coming out with all these makeup tutorials, and I couldn't play soccer anymore because of my arthritis and then the hip replacements. I came across a YouTube video and I was like, okay, this looks like fun. So next day I went to like London Drugs and got a bunch of products with my mom, and I just like started doing that. So I feel like I just kind of needed a different outlet to just enjoy. So that's kind of how it all started, from YouTube, following all these tutorials. And then I would just do makeup for fun on people.
And so when did you actually start doing makeup like professionally? Is that just like when you got your job later on, or like when you were still like a teenager, you did like stuff?
So when I was 20 when I went to makeup school, so I was still like doing freelance on the side. So I was 20 years old when I was doing makeup professionally.
So you come like a very long way, and you're successful and happy, and it's just like it's really nice to see someone who's like happy with what they're doing. And I'm glad that like all the positives out of it kind of like reflect on your health and like your well-being and stuff, and it kind of just like makes you a happy person and healthy person. I was kind of wondering how you have like swollen fingers sometimes and swollen wrists. Like, what are some techniques that you use, or some ways you kind of ensure that, makeup, you're still doing what you want to do, but, you're also taking care of like physically your hands?
Before I would even like go to a job, use some heat pad, or I'll even take, if I already know I'm having like a bad day, I'll take like a painkiller beforehand. Now, once I'm done my makeup and everything, and then I'll come back and do the same process. Like, just make sure I have like a warm heat pad and do certain stretches. Like, I will actually have to do hand stretching.
So you kind of know like what you have to do, and like when you are doing this, like, how the process works because you've been doing it for a while, which is a really good, like technique and strategy. I kind of like to, wrap up the podcast with some pieces of advice. I think it's so important for people listening to kind of, get some insight from you. So what advice would you give to someone who's considers switching careers?
I say, do it. Just take the leap and do it. I know it can be scary, but it just all works out at the end. Just go and do it.
I totally agree with that. I feel like sometimes it's kind of hard to, like get there, but then when you get there, it's just like rewarding after that because you get what you want.
Exactly.
What would you say to those who are struggling with keeping up their mental health?
It's okay to not be okay. You are allowed to have those days. Don't feel bad for having a bad day. And just honestly take it one day at a time. And that's all I can say. There
will be like ups and downs because like, it's so, all these conditions are very fluctuating, and you don't really know like what's going to happen tomorrow.
Exactly.
So it's really important to kind of just like take it day by day and then decide, how you feel and stuff.
Yeah. And it's like very easy, like for you to kind of get in like where you feel bad. Like, why am I feeling bad? Like, no, it's okay. Just accept that feeling and just feel it. And then you try again next day.
Yeah. Exactly. So thank you so much, Ravia, for coming on to Take a Paycheck today. I really had a great discussion with you. We get to talk about, hospitalizations, which are not the best, but also approaching people about arthritis, support systems, switching careers, and makeup. And it's so interesting to kind of, get some insight on that. Also, your passion, which is makeup. And so thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, like, comment, subscribe. Check out Ravia's social media channels, which will be linked in the description below. And yeah, we'll see everyone on Take a Paycheck.
I can't hide.